Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror and sci-fi show where things can get totally radical. Now today is a very special episode because I will be interviewing a legend in the world of music, and I am talking about Don Peake. Don Peake is, of course, the legendary guitarist for the legendary Wrecking Crew, the group of studio musicians in the 60s. And then he graduated his way through being a composer for horror films such as two Wes Craven classics, The Hills Have Eyes and The People Under the Stairs, and also an obscure classic I love called The Prey. And I'm having him on the show today to talk about all that stuff, about his career, his influences, and how he got to be associated with a musical landmark such as the Wrecking Crew and all the great musicians he worked with, such as John Lennon, the Righteous Brothers, the Jackson 5, and so many others. And I feel so lucky and honored to interview him today. So, here is my interview with Don Peake. Hi, Don.
Tommy.
How are you, sir?
Terrific, man. How are you?
I am great. It's such an honor. I thank you for taking the time today. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. How much time do you think we need?
About 45 minutes.
Jesus. Well, I'll do the best I can.
Okay. So, going back to the beginning, was music something that was on your radar early on?
Yes, my mother was a classical pianist, and my sister was a classical pianist. And I had heard a lot of classical music, so I was, very much fascinated by the way that music could change the mood.
Mm-hmm. Was guitar your first instrument?
Well, I had a tiny bit of high school clarinet. I didn't really start playing the guitar until late. I started about 16 years old.
Mm-hmm. How many instruments do you play overall?
Well, as an orchestrator, I know a little bit about every instrument because I've had to learn the fingerings on the violin and the positions of the slide on the trombone, and I can play a little drums. I can certainly play the bass, but mostly I'm a guitarist, and I play some piano, what we call composer piano, which means enough to write the music, but not enough to be a performer.
How long was it before you were able to read music?
Well, when I started playing the guitar, I was in the a cappella choir, so I was already reading music.
Mm-hmm. Who in music did you admire and you were influenced by growing up?
Mostly J.S. Bach.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Brandenburg Concerti and all the music of Bach is so mathematically perfect.
Mm-hmm. Were there any guitarists?
And I was a math science major in high school and in college.
Ah. Was there any guitarists in like rock music you liked?
Well, actually, my first guitar influence was Bob Dylan.
Oh.
And I learned how to play the finger-picking style and learned how to play Don't Think Twice, It's All Right.
Oh, it was folk music that you started out liking.
Right.
Nice. So how did you get so blessed in being part of the Wrecking Crew?
Well, in those days, Los Angeles was a very small place, and I met Phil Spector, and he gave me an album by T-Bone Walker.
Mm-hmm.
And that changed my life. So Phil actually was a mentor. And, excuse me, when I went in the military, so when I got back from the Coast Guard, after almost a year of training, started playing in a nightclub, and then Marshall Lieb came over to the club because he'd heard about me and said the Everly Brothers need a guitar player, and I auditioned for the Everly Brothers, and I was hired. But by this time, I was 21. Mm-hmm. So I was really a beginner, but I became the lead guitarist for the Everly Brothers, who were at the height of their career.
Mm-hmm.
And went to England and toured with the Rolling Stones were the opening act for us.
Wow.
And Bo Diddley and Little Richard were on the tour. And Keith Richards wrote an article in a magazine called The Melody Maker, where he talks about the fact that I had taught him some things on the guitar, and that he thought I was a terrific guitarist. And then I met Eric Clapton in London in '62 with Albert Lee. Mm-hmm. And Eric wrote about me in his autobiography and said that I was a terrific guitar player. So I just learned fast, and I was lucky.
Mm-hmm. You sure were, especially to get noticed by Eric Clapton. I mean, he's a god.
Well, he actually learned something from me, which I turned him on to B.B. King and Albert King and Lightnin' Hopkins and John Lee Hooker. He had never heard these guys.
Wow. He was just a Robert Johnson guy probably then.
Yeah, sure.
Wow. So you were the Everly Brothers concert guitarist. Did you play on any recordings?
I did not. We did one in Germany, but most of the records, the Everly Brothers, were recorded when I was in high school. Mm-hmm. And they were, as I said, at the top of their career. They had all these hit records. So I was, as you say, lead guitar on the concerts.
Wow. You played guitar on You've Lost That Loving Feeling by the Righteous Brothers. What was that like?
Well, that was amazing. And as a matter of fact, yesterday was the anniversary of River Deep, Mountain High with Ike and Tina Turner, mm-hmm. which I also played on. There's a website called the Wrecking Crew website. Mm-hmm. And when these anniversaries of these songs come around, they list the players, and they mention Ike and Tina. And so, yeah, I was playing for Phil. See, the Everly Brothers broke up in 1963. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I came back to Los Angeles, and Phil started using me on all these big sessions, like the Righteous Brothers. And, we did a lot of interesting records with the Righteous Brothers. We did, Unchained Melody, a lot of the ones that really stuck.
Wow.
And, of course, I also started playing for the Mamas and the Papas and for, just a lot of groups. Mm-hmm.
Was there a sense of energy in the studio that hinted that you were a part of something magical?
Oh, sure. I mean, when a shaggy-haired guy and a beautiful girl came in, they said their names were Caesar and Cleo. Mm-hmm. And we recorded a song called Baby Don't Go. And I played the lead guitar. There was a little tremolando piece that I did. Kind of like that. Mm-hmm. And Atlantic Records, Ahmet Erdogan, heard the record, and a week later he signed them as Sonny and Cher.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And I became lead guitarist for Sonny and Cher, and I'm on all the records. I'm on, I Got You, Babe. That's me doing the down, 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 down. Nice. Yeah. So I was in the middle of it right away.
You played on the Jackson 5's "I Want You Back" in ABC, which pretty much the same songs in some ways. What was that?
No, I disagree. Rhythmically, they were similar.
Yes,
but they certainly had their distinctions also.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this was the chore that Berry Gordy gave to Fonz Mazel, Deke Richards, and Freddie Perrin. He said, I want to do a new kind of bubblegum pop for Motown. And we walked in the studio. Diana Ross came in, leading a little boy who was 11 years old, mm-hmm. with a big afro, and said, this is Michael Jackson. And we all, were immediately struck with how talented he was. And Freddie Perrin passed out the music, and I Want You Back was written out. Oh. It wasn't something that we came up with. And I read that part. And the bass was an octave lower, Wilton Felder. And we played this thing so perfectly that it's very hard to hear the guitar because we are just right right in the groove together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's...
And so that was the first one, that was I Want You Back.
Mm-hmm.
And Berry Gordy said, this is it, let's do some more, and that's how ABC happened.
Wow, yeah, those are magical as well.
Yes.
I also see you work...
Also, excuse me, but Dancing Machine.
Oh.
And, you know, there was a lot of funky, cool, you know, tracks that we did for the J5. And then there were some ballads. There was a song called Maybe Tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm playing electric sitar. And you're and that's me on my Dan Electro choral electric sitar. Actually, it's choral electric sitar. It's not a Dan Electro. Pardon me.
Mm-hmm. Later on, you worked with Jermaine again on Let's Get Serious.
Absolutely. I wrote those arrangements. I was studying with a fabulous orchestrator and conductor, and I did these tracks, and Berry Gordy loved those arrangements.
Mm-hmm. I also see you worked with John Lennon. What did you do with him?
Well, I had met John Lennon when I was on tour with the Everlys in 62.
Mm-hmm.
And so when Phil Spector decided to do the rock and roll album, he called me, and I came in, and I played a combination of guitar, and I also played some parts on an electric bass.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, John recognized me because we had traveled together in England. The Beatles were always following the Everly Brothers to each gig. And then we went to Germany to the Star Club in Hamburg.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the Rolling Stones, the Everly Brothers, and the Beatles, and we traded sets with each other. So we were out there together in Germany in 62.
Wow. That must have been amazing. Did you know that these guys would be so successful?
Oh, I had a feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the rock and roll album's a good album. I like that cover of Stand By Me.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah. At what point did you start arranging albums?
Well, I met Barry White. And Barry White asked me to do some string arrangements when Gene Page would be busy. But also Freddie Perrin from the corporation had really noticed, that I could write string parts. And so Freddie Perrin would have me do some string overdubs on some of the Jackson 5 and some of the other things that he did. There were a lot of work that we did together.
Mm-hmm.
Demis Roussos, remember him?
Who?
Demis, D-E-M-I-S, Roussos.
Demis Roussos.
He was a European artist. Also, Freddie Perrin had me do strings on Minnie Riperton.
Oh.
And that's on the Stay in Love album. I'm doing most of the string arrangements.
Mm-hmm. Did you arrange a Monkees album?
I did a bunch of songs for the Monkees. It wasn't on an album. We did a bunch of singles, which were later put on an album. I did Mary, Mary, Gonna Buy Me a Dog, Sweet Young Thing, You May Just Be the One, Papa Jean's Blues.
Mm-hmm.
So Mike Nesmith and I worked together a lot.
Mm-hmm. We just lost Peter Tork, which was sad.
I know, it's terrible.
Mm-hmm. I saw them perform in 1997. They came to Candlestick Park in San Francisco, and they did a little concert before a Giants game, and they were all having fun. Mike Nesmith was the only one that wasn't there, of course, but it was a lot of fun seeing those guys.
Yeah, they were good guys.
Mm-hmm. So with all this amazing music with the Wrecking Crew, how does that lead to composing TV and movie scores?
Well, it started out, I was a champion car racer.
Mm-hmm.
I had won the Southern Pacific Championship in 1968 in a Lancia Fulvia, Fulvia, HF. And I had set the track record at Riverside Raceway in Salt Lake City and Phoenix. And I had won California, Nevada, Utah, and Arizona as a Southern Pacific champion. And I was then invited to the Nationals. And I was third place at the Nationals because of some bad guys who were cheating. But the point of all this is that the Wrecking Crew was slowing down. And I decided it was time for me to study arranging and starting to learn other things. So I sold the race car at the end of 68, and I bought a sailboat. And I started studying with Dr. Albert Harris, who's an Englishman, and a fantastic arranger. And I started learning all those things that I mentioned before about the violins and the French horns and the saxophones and the trombones, and just had to learn every instrument in the orchestra. And I saw things coming. You know, the wrecking crew were working every day. We used to work 3 sessions a day.
Mm-hmm.
And then it became 2 sessions a day, and then it became 1 a day, and then it became 1 every other day, and then it became, 2 a week. So it was getting very clear by the 70s that it was slowing down. And so I sought work as an arranger. And Bobby Darin had taken a liking to me. I was playing with him, and he asked me to do some arranging for Wayne Newton. And then he asked me to arrange his first single that he hadn't done in a long time, and it was called If I Were a Carpenter.
Right.
And I did that arrangement, and Darin loved it, and it became a hit. So all of a sudden, I was an arranger. And I was always fascinated by film scores. As a guitarist, I had played on some film scoring sessions.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked it. I really liked being in that room when they turned down the lights, and, we would play the music, and the film would be up on the screen. And it became clear to me that I really wanted to do that. So I started studying with Paul Glass. Not Philip Glass, Paul Glass.
Mm-hmm.
Paul Glass was a student of Krzysztof, I'm going to say it the wrong way, Penderecki is how it's spelled, pronounced Penderecki. In Poland, in communist Poland, Paul Glass had sneaked into Poland and was studying with Penderecki, learning a new system of writing called quarter tone system.
Mm-hmm.
And I studied with Paul Glass, and so when Wes Craven approached me about The Hills Have Eyes, I had already become, I was prolific in writing 12-tone and quarter-tone music. So The Hills Have Eyes score was really ugly because the movie was really ugly. And in fact, it was so ugly I couldn't work on it at nighttime. I would only write in the daytime.
Wow. There was some powerful orchestration in that score. Was there anything that was an inspiration for it?
Well, certainly how ugly the movie was. Also, if you'll notice, the characters were wearing necklaces made of alternating cartridges and human bones.
Mm-hmm.
You remember those necklaces?
Yeah.
Well, I had the prop master bring those necklaces to the scoring session, and we used those as instruments in the percussion when we were doing the foot chases up and down the trails.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I had the musicians play those necklaces as part of the percussion.
Wow. That's pretty creepy, but it works.
It is pretty creepy, yes.
I hear a lot of Quincy Jones influence in the horn playing in the music too.
Well, I knew Quincy from Ray Charles in 1964 when I was the first white guitarist with Ray Charles. Quincy was dear friends with Ray, and he would write a lot of arrangements for our band. And also, we did In the Heat of the Night, where Sidney Poitier plays the detective,
mm-hmm.
and I would play guitar on Heat of the Night with Quincy and Ray Charles. And I'm on a lot of Ray Charles records for almost 10 years.
Oh, wow. He must have been great to work with.
Fabulous. If you go ahead after we're off the phone and listen to the original Makin' Whoopee, the live recording,
mm-hmm.
and you can hear me learning the song on the stage because they didn't ever rehearse it. So I learned it while we were recording it.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I will definitely check that out. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll hear me slipping in one of the chords.
Nice. Then you did music for a little horror movie called Delusion.
Yeah, I don't even remember that one.
Yeah, I actually listened to it the other night. You had this kind of church organ sound. It was really gloomy and tuneful at the same time. It reminds me kind of like Dire Straits' song Walk of Life a little bit.
And where did you find Delusion?
It was on YouTube.
No kidding. The whole film?
The whole film.
I'll be damned.
Yeah.
I'm going to look that up.
Yeah. I was listening to it. Yeah, it was pretty interesting of a score, I thought. But you don't remember anything from it.
I don't.
Okay.
If I hear it again, I'll start remembering.
Okay. Do you remember the music you did for The Prey?
The Prey. The Prey was an interesting movie. It was never released, right?
It was barely released, but it was definitely on video.
I know. Isn't it Eddie Brown and Summer Brown?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay, well, Eddie Brown came to me and played me Stravinsky's Rite of Spring and said, I want this. And I said, well, you can't use that. And he said, well, write something like it. And I tried so hard to do something different. But when you write those kind of rhythms and intervals like Stravinsky did, it sounds like Stravinsky, even if all the notes are different.
Yeah.
And so I'm afraid it sounds like I stole Stravinsky, which I did not.
The score, I have to say, though, is a little ahead of its time. It kind of predates guys who came after you, like Danny Elfman and Richard Band, who was a little bit at the same time. It's got this balance between slasher movie music and circus music.
Right. Well, interesting, Richard Band and I are now very good friends. And we met at one of those Comic-Cons.
Right.
Because we were both signing autographs. And there was a big, long table, and there was Richard Band, Harry Manfredini, Joe Loduca, Joseph Bishara, Christopher Young, and me. And I looked at everybody. I said, guys, we never see each other. We've never even met. Let's go to dinner. And we all went out to dinner, and from that day on, now every month we have dinner, and we call ourselves the Decomposers.
That's brilliant. I like that.
Yeah, and we were good buddies, all of us.
Yeah, I've met Richard at a horror con, and I interviewed him. He's a great guy.
He's a lovely guy.
Got a lot of great insight into his music.
Yes.
Now, Wes had you back for The People Under the Stairs. Why did it take so long for him and you to work together again?
Well, he fell in love with a guy that he did a bunch of movies with, who was a quote unquote legitimate composer. And I can't think of his name right now. Damn it. But anyway, Wes started using that guy and used him on everything. And then one day I get a phone call from Wes. And he said, Don, we're in trouble. And I said, what do you mean? He said, we're at the studio at Universal. He said, I hired, what's his name?
Is it Charles Bernstein?
No. The guy who was a medical assistant who then wrote for films. So he wrote Dead Calm. Graham Revell. He hired Graham Revell to do the score for The People Under the Stairs. And they got to the stage at Universal. They were making the mix, and the score was not working. It was very, languorous. It was kind of this quiet jazz. It sounded like Miles Davis.
Yeah.
And Wes said, this is not working. You've got to help me. And I said, well, what's our schedule? He said, we're mixing right now. So my son Mike was staying with me, and we had a laboratory. And I said, okay, here we go. And I started making music, and Mike was my engineer. And I cranked out that score while they were mixing the film. And I knew what it needed. I knew the energy that it needed, especially for those scenes running down inside the walls and that stuff. And I love my theme for the gold, when you see the treasure room.
Right.
Anyway, so I made that score, under duress, if you will, but I thought it turned out fine.
Oh, I personally think it's some of the finest music you've ever written.
Thank you.
Yes, it's my favorite of all of them. It has this little new age / avant-garde feel to it. Yeah. Because
I was writing avant-garde music. Now, did you ever see a film that was an NBC movie of the week called I Desire, the Vampire?
I Desire. I don't believe so.
Okay, that's a film that I was hired to do by Green Epstein, Alan Epstein and Jim Green. And they had figured I was going to come in with a rock and roll score, but I came in with a full orchestra and did a really Baroque score. And Robert Foster was the writer on that. And Robert Foster was then hired to do the Knight Rider series. And he said, I'll come in if you bring Peake. And so I was hired after 12 episodes. Stu Phillips was let go, and I became the composer on Knight Rider.
Wow. I love that music for Knight Rider. It's got this late 70s, early 80s electronic sound, but
Right.
it doesn't sound anything like a cop series, which is good because it wasn't a traditional cop show.
No, it was a fantasy show.
Right.
I never forget one night I was writing 20 minutes of original music every week.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of music, a lot of scores. Universal would come to the house and pick it up at 5 in the morning, and then we recorded about 10 a.m. So I was writing and writing. It was midnight, and there was a big, long car chase,
Mm-hmm.
and I was stuck. And I called Jack Smalley, who's an orchestrator that I've invited to help me finish this show. And I said, Jack, man, I've got this 4.5-minute car chase. I don't know what to do. He said, Don, listen to me. It's just a guy driving a black car. I said, no, man, no, that's Kit. That's Michael. He said, Don, listen. It's just a guy driving a black car. I said, thank you, man. I went and started writing.
Wow. I was also reading, too, there was an episode where you had an uncredited role as a dancer in a bar.
Yes. I wasn't a dancer, though. I was actually playing guitar in the band.
Oh, okay.
Whoever put that in IMDb or Wikipedia, wherever it is.
Yeah, they're never quite accurate, IMDb or Wikipedia.
By the way, since you and I are doing this interview, I want to clarify something. My friend Melvin Reagan, who was known as Wawa Watson, passed away. And everybody thought that he played the opening to Marvin Gaye's Let's Get It On.
Mm-hmm.
But in fact, it was me.
Oh.
And everybody thought, well, Wawa's black. He plays the Wawa, and he tours with Marvin. It must have been him. But Motown left my name off the record in the original. Later on, they corrected it. But I was the guitarist that went, wah, 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 wah. That was me. And I have the contract to prove it. Also, I made a mistake. About 6 seconds in, I hit the open G string, and it goes twang.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not Melvin Reagan. It was me. So if you want to put that in the article, I'd appreciate it.
So that wasn't intentional, I guess, then.
Well, you don't know if it was racist. You don't know what it was. All I know is they left my name off. And then when Wawa passed away, all the magazines said, oh, he did the Let's Get It On, but he did not.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So these days, are you mostly retired, or do you still do...
No, I'm not retired. I am decomposing, as I told you. But what I am doing is teaching at a high school for kids with ADHD and OCD, and I've been doing it for 10 years at a place called Bridges Academy in Studio City.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm part of a 3-man music department, and we educate these young people in, coordinating the music with, helping their brains to function and to fire. And it's amazing the results that we get. Mm-hmm. It's extraordinary.
Wow! So you're teaching music then?
Yeah, and I taught classes at UCLA Extension, the Wrecking Crew classes. Mm-hmm. And I also put together the Wrecking Crew band with Don Randy, R-I-N-D-I, and Chuck Berghofer, B-E-R-G-H-O-F-E-R. And we do a tribute to Glenn Campbell because he was our bandmate. Mm-hmm. So we do some of the Glenn Campbell songs, and we do Sonny Cher, because we're the original guys that played on the records.
Yeah.
So it's not a cover band. We are, an actual, I guess you'd say, legacy band. And so we do play, and we pack the house always. And I'm about to do a show with Albert Lee and me and Waddy Wachtel, W-A-C-H-T-E-L. Mm-hmm. And that each of us was lead guitarist with the Everly Brothers at a different time. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to do a show. We're going to talk about the Everly Brothers and play some music. It's going to be fantastic.
Nice. How do you think the business has evolved since you started?
I think it is unvolved, not evolved. I think that, it's funny. I asked Waddy, I said, listen, man, I said, we've got a boat. Why don't you come on down to the boat? And Waddy said, Don, I'm a man of the great indoors.
Yeah, there's no more record labels. Everyone makes their own music. The movie business.
I mean, it's all gone. the thing that we knew, my wife is a recording artist, Judy Pulver, Pulver, Judipulver. She was on MGM Records. She's a wonderful artist, but we both saw the industry change, and now she's the director of music advertising at Variety.
Mm-hmm.
And we perform together, but she's not the star that she was, and the industry is just different now. I am releasing Knight Rider. We found some tapes in the garage in the vault
mm-hmm.
from the old Knight Rider that were never released, and we've digitized them, and we're releasing them on a website called Kit Still Rocks.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm selling Knight Rider music with Universal's permission.
Nice.
And what can I say? It's all good. I'm still playing. And we are going to be touring, and the Wrecking Crew, I think, is going to do one of those cruise ship things,
mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of people that would like to talk to us. We never stop.
Yeah. With all these amazing experiences you've had in this amazing career, have you ever thought about writing a book?
I'm actually very serious. Now that we have this Kit Still Rocks website,
mm-hmm.
I think I am going to. I started to write about Ray Charles because it was like, being the first white guitarist in that band in 1964 and traveling through the South where the Governor Wallace tried to get me off the bus. They were going to kill me in Montgomery. Mm-hmm. And Ray Charles saved my life that night. That's another story. But the point of all this is that I have seen a lot of things, and I started writing about Ray Charles, and then I started thinking about the Everly Brothers, and then I started thinking about the studios and all these days that we would go in there together and play all day long. Go out for lunch together, come back, play again, and play perfectly. Because in those days, you couldn't go back and overdub.
Mm-hmm.
And nowadays, of course, on Pro Tools, they just say, "Oh, don't worry, we'll punch it in," or we'll sample it and fly it in.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to be really good.
Yeah, there was no room for error. Sounds like.
No. Do you remember those albums made by Sheffield Records called the Direct-to-Disc?
Direct-to-Disc, no.
Well, if you ever get a chance to listen to one of those, the audiophiles pay thousands and thousands of dollars for these vinyl pressings that we did where we recorded directly to the master.
Mm-hmm.
So we did 6 songs, and then we'd stop, and then we'd put on another piece of vinyl, and we'd do 6 more songs. And it had to be perfect.
I'll check it out. Absolutely. Do you have any convention appearances coming up?
Not yet, but we're trying to. You could maybe help us with this. What we'd like to do is go out as the Decomposers with the 6 of us,
mm-hmm.
and show up at these conventions because it's pretty powerful. I mean, I'm not as well written, as Richard Band and Christopher Young. Those guys are superstars.
Mm-hmm.
But I did make my contribution. There was a movie called The Legend of Bigfoot that I did. There were a couple of movies that were kind of low-key. Now, The Prey, what's going to happen? It's just going to come out on digital?
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be, online?
I guess, yeah. Online
or
streaming.
Or will they actually make a Blu-ray of it?
Yeah, I think it'll probably come out on Blu-ray.
Okay, how did you hear about it?
You just told me.
But I mean, how did you know about The Prey?
About The Prey? Oh, from VHS.
Okay. Well, anyway, I would love to hear it. I'd love to hear that, and I'm going to listen for Delusion,
mm-hmm.
see what that's all about.
Yeah, that was on YouTube.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you for as we say in a Ray Charles band, thank you for pulling my coat to that.
Of course. In 2016, you and the cast of The Hills Have Eyes were at Son of Monsterpalooza, and I met everyone except you. I was gonna go. I was gonna go over and meet you. But you were having a deep conversation with somebody, and I didn't want to interrupt.
Oh, well, I wish you had.
Yeah.
Well, are you ever in L.A.?
Oh yeah, I'm actually going down there next month for Monsterpalooza.
Well, call me and we'll hang out.
Okay, that'd be great.
But if there's anything you can do to promote the 6 of us,
mm-hmm.
that would be terrific.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm always suggesting people for cons and stuff, and
Right.
sometimes they listen to me, sometimes they don't. You know?
Well, in the Navy they say run it at the flagpole and see if anybody salutes.
Mm-hmm. That's a great analogy.
And it's true.
Mm-hmm.
Also, there's another bit of wisdom. When I first got in the Coast Guard and became a damage controlman, the big, tall, lanky bosun's mate said, there's 3 things you need to know to survive in the Navy. And, of course, at that point, the Coast Guard was put on the Navy.
Yeah.
After World War II. And he said there are 3 things. If it moves, salute it. If it doesn't move, move it. If you can't move it, paint it.
Wow. It just keeps going.
So that's what you do on a ship.
Mm-hmm.
You're constantly chipping and painting, and the sea is very unforgiving, and the salt water constantly is corroding. So you're constantly chipping and painting, unless you're a damage controlman like me, in which case you go down to the engine room and you don't paint.
Were you in the military all 3 years?
I was in the Coast Guard for 8 years.
Oh, for 8 years.
I was a reserve. I was a second-class petty officer, and once a year they would send me out on a ship out to sea for 28 days. So I'd end up like 30 days a year.
Wow.
But I was already on with the Everly Brothers, and I didn't want to go to the reserve meetings. And we were activated for the Bay of Pigs, and we were activated for the Lebanon crisis in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
So I was discharged. Actually, I was discharged in '66. So Lebanon must have been before that.
Wow.
But I was a reserve for 8 years.
Yeah.
Then I did 8 years. I did 27 years as a reserve detective of Los Angeles County Sheriffs.
Huh. Wow. Yeah, you definitely got a book there.
And I had a lot of experiences with the sheriffs.
Wow, that's so cool. My birthday is the day before yours.
Oh, you're kidding! A Gemini.
Yes. I'm the same day as Robert Englund, and you're the same day as Prince.
Oh, nice. Well, I was such a big fan of Prince.
Yeah, he was a talented guy.
Are you a player?
My dad had a band when I was a kid, a rock band. He tried to teach me how to play guitar, and just my fingers are really fat. I was never able to master it. I could play one note, and that's about it.
But if you play the right note, that's it. All those guys that are going, just find one good note and dee 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 dee. Sit on it. That's what we say. Anyway, I'll look forward to meeting you in person.
Oh, absolutely. I will definitely hit you up. And I wanted you to know I appreciate so much you coming on the podcast today. And this was just truly amazing. I mean, it's not often that I get to interview, a great musician with great stories. So I thank you so much.
Great. Well, I hope you learned something different about me than what you knew before.
I certainly did, sir. Thank you.
Bless you, and we'll talk some more.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Have a great day.
Okay, God bless. Bye now.
Bye-bye. Well, there you have it. Don Peake. Ain't he a cool dude? Thank you so much, Don. Yes, I'm certainly glad that we got to talk and you got to tell me those great stories about all those amazing musicians that you worked with back in the 60s. And I will definitely hit you up when I come to Los Angeles. I'm so honored by that, by the way. If you like this video, everyone, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Add me as a friend on Facebook. Join my Tommy Kovac comedian page on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram and all that fun stuff. Well, that's all the time we have this week on Splat from the Past. Until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying, there's no shame in living in the past because the present sucks. Later, dudes.